It's wonderful to be here at Grimanesa Amorós' wonderful studio. It's filled with all her incredible artwork, but most important, it's filled with Grimanesa. And I'm delighted to be here. I've known Grimanesa now for, it's probably been over 12 years, and she first came to my apartment on Central Park South, where I was hosting Art W salons at that point, probably earlier than most people did that type of thing. And it was an immediate connection with Grimanesa. There was something about her soul, her artistic ability, her generosity that I just really connected with. And I'm so delighted to be here today to talk about her and include her in my Women We Create blog that we now probably, I think she's going to be maybe the 20th interview that we've done. What's wonderful about Grimanesa is her work draws upon her Peruvian cultural legacy. Her work incorporates lighting, video, and sculpture to create specific installations. And I actually saw one of her installations at Prospect Park, and it was phenomenal, and I would love Grimanesa to talk about that. I think it was called Hidura?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marjorie, for having this time together to be able to share what I love to do the most. And yes, indeed, we share a long friendship. So I'm so glad to be here with you. Hedera is actually a wonderful public project that it was organized by Elizabeth Ferrer. She's the director and curator of BRIC. This was a collaboration also with Prospect Park. Hedera means in Latin ivy. I chose this word because this ivy was all along Prospect Park, which, as you know, is a very large park. There are many different kinds, so I thought that the name was very much appropriate. In most of my installations, I want to make sure that the piece communicates with the architecture, the surroundings, and the viewer.
Well, I have to tell you, when I first walked into the Prospect Park and I saw this incredible light sculpture installation, it was so powerful because these beautiful red sort of tubes were just coming out, and you could see it from 360 degrees. You literally went and walked around the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was so interesting to be able to see this particular piece from so many different angles, because as you were experiencing it, you really felt a complete connection. And I'm so curious, Grimanesa, how did you create this? I mean, I know you had a lot of people helping you, but did you have a vision of this from the very beginning, or was it something that evolved over time? Or like, when you start these things, do you start it on paper and then sort of, draw it out, and then it comes together? So what, in a sense, what's your journey to completing a piece?
It's definitely a very large journey, for sure. From like the first side of where you're going to be building the piece, it's a lot of logistics involved. I want to summarize is to say that, yes, indeed, we do have to have some drawings, some renderings, because that gives me basically the vision as to, also most important, to stay on budget. You have to conform with the budget that is given to you from the beginning. You try to plan and organize yourself the best way you can. But when you are on site, then that's a different ballgame, because then is the physicality of the piece. And that it's you with the piece on site. You have to basically fill the space for you.
You have sort of a diagram, and you have these incredible group of people helping you. Are these, each time you do an installation, are they new people that you bring in who are familiar with the particular site? Is that how you work it? Or are these people that have worked with you through a number of different installations?
I have what I call my specialized team, which is extended family, that I really travel with them everywhere. And then one of the things that I love is that I actually request working with the people from the country on from the site. And it's just a wonderful process of learning from both sides. We learn a lot about them, about their own cultures, and then vice versa. And the teams really do change from installation to each one. They're all different ones. But what it doesn't change is the team once it started it.
And in each case with different installations, and you've done installations globally all over the world, whether it's been in Beijing or Tel Aviv or even the Venice Biennale, which I thought was amazing, to Arizona with Golden Waters, New York. How long do some of these installations take to do? I mean, for example, Golden Waters was huge. I mean, how long did that take?
It depends. The minimum that an installation will take, it will be at least 10 days. And all the way to sometimes, in some occasions, a month. But it has never taken me more than a month. I would say that maybe the usual for the large installations would be 3 weeks.
Really?
Yeah, 3 weeks of physically installing, and then another extra week minimum also of doing the lighting sequence. Because in my work, you have the structure, the physicality, and at the same time, then you have the lighting sequence that is all in reference with the light. And that happens once all the piece is completely built.
You know, what's so interesting about your background, first of all, you were born in Lima, Peru.
Correct.
Your mom encouraged you. You started painting, and
Yes.
Which I thought was phenomenal. And you also had the psychology background. But your father was also this engineer, which I think had a tremendous impact in terms of you and sort of what you would do as you went forward. And it was interesting in another conversation we had, you talked about how your father gave you the courage to move on. And I thought that was such an interesting story. Would you relate that to us? I mean, because it's so interesting how our parents have so much to do with who we are as we go forward in our whatever path we take. And I think in your case, your parents had a tremendous amount of influence on you, especially your father.
Yes, that's absolutely true. I think that my mother gave me a tremendous appreciation for beauty. She, throughout, since I was very little, she developed constantly my eye with color. She used to do these beautiful crafts, and she really, really developed the eye, which usually sometimes it takes time. And my father, well, as an engineer, as all engineers, you know, many might be listening to us now, they're very practical and logical. So my father really installed in me this way of thinking about Grimanesa is not about finding the excuses not to do the job. Now you go out there and just do it. So, of course, you could imagine as a little girl, you try to fight with this, but at the same time, you mentioned that before, it starts creating the personality. We are all born with a temperament and a character, but the personality keeps evolving according to our own experiences. I'm very grateful to my dad. He's not with me anymore. I lost him very recently from brain cancer, but then more now than ever made me realize about exactly and precisely what you have just commented about the influence that he had over the development of my personality.
It's interesting you say that because, you know, I didn't know that about you, that your father had brain cancer, so did mine. And like you were influenced very much by him as well as I was. My father was this amazing creative force who designed men's hats of all things.
Wow.
And he actually was chosen, interesting enough, by the Hat Corporation of America to present a fleet of hats for President Kennedy. And he also had this wonderful way of communicating and had the sales ability, and I think there was a little of that rubbed off on me as well. So it's very interesting how our fathers and your mom really do impact us. And I want to talk a little about your journey from Lima to New York. You had this show in Lima that was a major success where you had done all these great paintings. Then you came and you were received a scholarship to study at the Art Students League. I think you went then, considered going from painting to sculpture, to 3D, and how did that happen? I mean, that was sort of an interesting transition to make. What was it, Grimanesa, that made you want to go beyond doing some beautiful painting that you were doing to 3D and getting into light installations?
Rosina Florio was the director of the Art Students League for many years. Now she of course passed away many years ago, and she really supported me quite a lot for giving me one scholarship after the others, including materials, because the Art Students League, I'm not sure now because I have not been in a while, had a store where they would sell canvases and painting as well.
They still have the store.
They still have, okay.
They still have the store.
So basically I spent my life there since 8 o'clock until I basically almost closing the school. It was until almost 10:30, I think. 10:45, I was one of the last ones to leave. And I did that for every day for the 4 years. And one of the things that I actually wanted to do when I was at the Art Students League was to be able to draw very well. I thought that was very important because then I could discompose and do whatever I want. That would give me a nice way of discomposing, other structures. But then I was doing it with a knowledge in the background as to why I was doing it that way. And I used to practice in the topless bars, of New York City. Yes, it's a true story. I knew them all. I think the last one was Billy's. This was, the topless, with all the ladies. And then, of course, I will tip them. I will be, just in the corner. They knew me already. Why I will go there? They will change poses very quickly. So that made my hand be very quick. But at least I would go at least twice a week. So that made me do amazing, fluidity in my drawings. So it was the movement
that you were really into.
Correct. Basically, I was concentrating like curving shapes,
of course.
Because, they have, you talk about seconds for each pose. I basically was a painter, right, since I was 11 years old. But I always wanted to make a sculpture, be a sculptress. So, but, as we all know, spaces in New York, sometimes, real estate could be a little hype. And so it was difficult for me to find the studio that would allow me to be able to do my sculpture. So I have to prolong my painting a little bit further until I could actually have the space to be able to express what I wanted to do.
What made you decide to begin working with these tubes, these LED tubes that you use for light? And I mean, because you could have done a lot of different things, but it's so interesting how dramatic it works. You're so into the light, and then you talk about movement and sort of the lyrical sense of what these installations are like, and it's very interesting relating it back to your drawings, but then bringing it to something that is so impactful.
Many years ago, I took a trip to the north of Peru. When I went to this town called Huanchaco, I saw these boats that the fishermen will use to do the catch of the day. And they were all made by these giant plant stalks called totora reeds, which I saw in the floating sleds in Lake Titicaca. Then I saw these totora reeds, but they were much, much taller than in Lake Titicaca, and they were swinging in the wind. That's where the structure of the tubing started.
Grimanesa, one of the things that we touched on, but I think is so paramount in your pieces that you've done all around the world, is how you've engineered this connection to your audience or to the environment. Talk to me a little about what installations do you think you were most successful in doing that?
That's a little difficult to answer, because I had to say that for me, each installation is like the first one that I have done. Okay, that's for sure.
Okay, so it's sort of like your base.
Yes, yeah. Each one is. So that means that each installation is like, when I finish, Grimanesa has put 100% on it. I wouldn't say preoccupation, but always the sensibility that I have about communicating with the viewer. Of course, while I am doing the piece, I'm not thinking about the viewer. I'm thinking about strictly, precisely about the piece. When I finish, then I become a viewer. Then I go around, and then I switch. From being an artist, I became the viewer. So I have this roll of paper.
So it's that interplay.
Yes, it's an interplay. So I become objective as to what is this piece that I have in front of me. And by disconnecting yourself from the piece. This way you're going to be able to see instances that you don't see it. When you are immersed in the doing.
You know, one of the things I've admired so much about you, Grimanesa, over the years is the sense of fearlessness that you encourage to move on to the next project. Mm-hmm. And you've been recognized globally for, God, what, 15, 20 years now in terms of your work. Mm-hmm. But what's the process? How do you go about, which I think would be very interesting for some of these people who are possibly reading this blog and who want to be part of the network, and how do you go and get new installations? What is it about, like, what do you do? How do you work with your staff? Are these people who primarily come to you and say, look, we have a special exhibit we would like to put on, or a special installation, we think you'd be phenomenal at it, why don't you put together some drawings and show us what you would like to do? Is that the process, or is it something completely different?
Well, number one is many questions in one question.
That's okay, great.
So I'm going to try to remember some of them. For me, it has never been important to be in covers of magazines or in features, but rather than all those instances give me the platform. So this way I could be able to do more for others. Mm-hmm. So the better the platform, the bigger it gets, or the more solid, that allows me that I'm going to be able to do a lot more of helping, in other words. Mm-hmm. What is important, how would you want to communicate, and what is what you want as an artist. That's very, very important. And so I had that part always very clear. So there is an art world, of course, but then perhaps you don't want to just be ruled by certain parameters that the art world might have for us artists. About how the work comes to me, because I don't have a large studio, I do not have time to sign myself in competitions. This is all really recommendations. It's all word to mouth. Mm-hmm.
So it's really based on the power of your work that people talk about you and then want you to do other installations in other locations.
I'm very fortunate. Like you said, we wanted to do things for the last 12 years. The one also with Liz Smith for the Peninsula Hotel. That was another case. For many years, she wanted to work with me, and then the circumstances and the right elements, came along, and we actually made that piece.
That was, by the way, a beautiful piece, Pink Lotus. I loved it. I remember seeing it in front of it.
Very meaningful, too.
Oh, my goodness. Yes. I mean, yes, it was this whole thing of sort of the symbolic association with creation, enlightenment, rebirth, and very definitely you giving back, the whole thing about breast awareness, and I mean, that was a very big thing. That was really one of the reasons you did it.
Yes, very important. Yeah. Very, very important. The reason with that collaboration was just perfect. It was about how could I help other women to become aware about, for example, breast cancer, and then how we all could help each other.
We've all gone through this whole era, difficulty dealing with COVID. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We've all been, isolated in place. How has this experience been for you as an artist? And has that, whatever experience that you felt and are feeling, do you think it will impact it all as you go forward in some of the future installations that you're going to create?
For a lot of us, this pandemic have made us be aware. For me, it was a chance to physically rest a little bit of a lot of traveling, and so I did a whole series of very small pieces, because sometimes small pieces could have their intricacies, and it's a different way of solving certain issues. And there were a lot of projects that they were already on course, so they keep on working on those. I'm very curious myself of a project that we already started it in India. I have done already the installation, but I have to go there to do the lighting sequence, right? So I have to go back another...
And that's so integral to your work.
Of course. So that I have to go back another, 2 weeks. But of course, with COVID, it has been, postponed. India is not doing so well at this point.
What's it going to be called? Can you say?
Yes, Golden Array. And then I'm looking forward to a project in March for Saudi Arabia. It had to do parallel to G20. And we will think that Saudi Arabia is a country that is in a lot of flux and changing.
Sure. Yeah.
And to me was, what an amazing opportunity for me to communicate with the youth there and other women. That was my goal and my thoughts behind. I have another large project with the City of New York.
And the City of New York, is that with the Public Art Fund or the...
Yes, it's with Percent Art, the city, and a lot of other organizations as well.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
I think we all want to know, when you meet somebody as exceptional as Grimanesa, I think that what you're working on is so interesting for all of us to hear about and to hear about your future plans. I think about that with COVID and how it was great for me. And I hear the same thing with you, that just having that ability to do that, it really helps us to be even more creative, to be more productive in the future. And I think we all should look at this as a time of renewal, actually. Instead of seeing it as a negative, we look at it as a positive. And I think it's been very powerful.
I think so too. I believe that, artists, somehow we have a responsibility to make people think. And so when we have this time for resting, it acutes our time thinking about our own selves and what we are actually doing. That thinking you want to share with others. At the same time, that will make them more creative.
I think that's sort of the power of all of us, and the power of women and what we do and how we create. It's really pretty incredible. And I'd like to end today and just say that this has been amazing, Grimanesa, just to have the opportunity for us to talk and to have this in a video format, which is unusual from all the interviews I've done, but it's very special.
There's always a first time, right? That's what they say.
Yes.
But, it's wonderful to have this structure and this platform where you are creating.
Yeah, well, I think it's very important, and I think video is extremely important way to take things to the next dimension. And I think you're absolutely right, being this is such a visual medium that we work in, to have a video interview with us is that much more special.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. It's wonderful to be with you and discuss about all these different issues. Great. It has been great. Thank you.
You're welcome.